From the gang-controlled favelas to the neighborhood Iron Mike Tyson grew up in, get ready to explore the Earth's darkest corners in our list of the top 10 horrifying cities you don't want to live in. Number 10. Kowloon Walled City, Hong Kong, China. When a former Chinese military fort was taken over by squatters and gangsters following the end of World War II, it quickly turned into a metropolis of ramshackle high-rises. With no running water or heating, 30,000 residents squeezed into the tiny 6.5-acre territory, making the population density a ridiculous 3.25 million people per square mile. High rates of prostitution, gambling, drug use, murders, and opium dens were rampant in the rat-infested territory. Greater Hong Kong turned a blind eye to Kowloon Walled City, which was governed for years by the Chinese mafia, the Triads. Even the police were too scared to enter the city unless in large groups. Everything changed in the 90s when the government finally decided to destroy the anarchic slum. An evacuation was ordered in March 1993, and the demolition began. Today, the area is home to the leafy Kowloon Walled City Park, with opium dens replaced with the more pleasant gardens and monuments. Number 9. Kabira, Nairobi, Kenya. Having one of the world's worst slums on your outskirts isn't a great look for any city. On the edge of Kenya's capital, Nairobi, lies Kabira, one of the world's worst slums. These slums are filled with homes typically made from mud and concrete, with toilets that are just holes dug into the ground and shared by hundreds of other people. Gross! Typhoid and cholera spreads rapidly throughout the population, mainly due to the slum's polluted mucky waters. It's also a very dangerous place for women, with those who are out of their homes after dark often being the victim of rape. The enterprising criminals of this slum cleverly tap into nearby Nairobi's power grid, bringing electricity to a few select places. With half of Kabira's population being unemployed, most inhabitants take up the habit of drug taking to pass the time. Glue sniffing is a huge problem for the people of Kabira, for example. As if all these issues weren't bad enough, the slum is also home to rampant AIDS. Poverty causes many women to sell their bodies just to make enough money to feed themselves, which of course only assists in the spread of the deadly disease. Orphan children are often tragically born with the disease and are left to haunt the trash-choked streets with no place to call home. Number 8. Fergana Valley, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. When the Soviet Union was divided into independent republics, hostilities arose. The Fergana Valley sees an extreme amount of violence due to it being split by the three nations of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. The valley is the center of Islamic fundamentalism and various ethnicities which violently clash on the regular. On top of this conflict, the economy is in a terrible state, with its flaws only being rivaled by the degree of corruption existent in the government. This was highlighted by the horrifying massacre of a group of protesters by the military. On May 13, 2005, over 1,000 protesters complaining about the state of the economy and the policies of the president were slain when the military opened fire on them in Uzbek town of Ajadan. The corruption of the government was seen through the cover-up scheme which followed the massacre. The government claimed only 187 were killed, but many claims that the bodies of those killed, which include women and children, were buried in secret mass graves as a way of downplaying the true scope of the carnage. With hundreds of thousands of refugees wandering the streets and corpses littering the sidewalks, Fergana Valley is a truly sad and horrifying place to live. Number 7. La Perla, San Juan, Puerto Rico, USA. La Perla is such a horrible place that it is often omitted from maps of San Juan to keep tourists from traveling there. Once home to a slaughterhouse, La Perla is a 15-square-block settlement with a terrible drug problem on the outskirts of San Juan. This shanty town is known for its proliferation of drugs, more specifically, heroin imported from suppliers in South America. It is quite a beautiful place with its multicolored homes, breathtaking views, and its very own Caribbean beach. It's just a shame that it is plagued by the drug underworld, highlighted by the 2000 police raid, which netted 114 drug arrests based on an 18-month investigation by the DEA, the Puerto Rico Justice Department, and several other agencies. Until something is done to stop the problem at its core, La Perla's drug problem isn't going anywhere, and neither is its horrific reputation. Number 6. Brownsville, Brooklyn, USA. Next up is the most violent place in New York, where even UPS drivers make their deliveries in the company of an armed guard. Brownsville is made up of huge, low-income apartment buildings where crime is prevalent. These projects are untouched by the gentrification and tumbling rates of crime that the rest of the city has experienced in recent years. Most of the crime is drug-related, but the current situation is relatively peaceful when compared to the crack cocaine epidemic of the 80s and 90s. Organized gangs have fractured into smaller fragments, making them significantly less powerful. Brownsville is no joke, with many residents of this hardened neighborhood being forced into making a living with their fists. It's no coincidence that such a harsh environment has produced a long list of championship boxers, including Shannon Briggs and the baddest man on the planet, Iron Mike Tyson. Number 5. Marian Colombia. With the help of Pablo Escobar's cartel, Medellin was the most violent city in the world during the height of the cocaine trade in the late 80s. Whilst Escobar was killed by police forces in 1993, crime may have declined, but the region still suffers thousands of murders each year. In 2009, there were 2,899 homicides, which is a crazily high number, but not when compared to the 6,500 homicides in 1991. With crime mainly tied to drug trafficking, other schemes such as extortion and kidnapping add to the expansive criminal landscape. If you watch Netflix's Narcos and were thinking of visiting Medellin, then think again, as there is nothing glamorous about visiting this place. Local criminals frequently target innocent tourists, holding them for ransom and forcing them to empty their bank accounts from local ATMs at gunpoint. Violence has been on the rise in the region since 2012 with two rival cartels, the Office of Envigado and Los Orabeños, fighting over local territories with plenty of blood being spilled. It would be wise to stay clear of here. Number 4. Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Ciudad Juarez was crowned the murder capital of the world in 2009 with a staggering 130 murders per 100,000 inhabitants. The town has become the epicenter of the Mexican drug war, with rival cartels leaving behind piles of corpses after deadly conflicts. The number of deaths is probably even higher, as many people simply vanish, usually ending up buried in secret mass graves. With a high rate of sexual assault, countless people missing, and numerous victims of domestic violence, Ciudad Juarez is a horrible place to live. With police officers often either too corrupt or too afraid to leave the station, there looks to be no end in sight to the misery. Number 3. Detroit, Michigan, USA. Home to Eminem and once heralded as the Motor City, Detroit has more recently come to be known as one of the United States murder capitals. After the decline of the American automotive industry, the city has been largely turned into a wasteland, signified by Detroit declaring bankruptcy in 2013 with a debt of approximately $18 billion. The population has dropped 25% since 2000, with many of the boarded-up houses being taken over by squatters. The basements of abandoned buildings are also a favorite location for illegal dogfights. The city's dog problem doesn't end there, with tens of thousands of strays, mostly pit bulls, roaming the streets. Detroit is a horrible place to live, with the top 3 most dangerous neighborhoods in America all being found in the city. The worst of the worst is the area surrounding West Chicago Street and Livernois Avenue, which is so bad that residents have a 1 in 7 chance of becoming the victim of violent crime there each year. Number 2. Favelas of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. With the stunning white sands of Copacabana Beach, and with such spectacular events as its carnival, it's easy to see why Rio de Janeiro is such a hotspot for tourists. The fringes of the city is a completely different world, filled with huge slums called favelas. Rio is a major port for cocaine trafficking to Europe, and the favelas are often ruled by heartless drug lords who keep this trade flowing. One of the more colorful characters from the area was Erisma Rodriguez Moreira, known as Bem TV. Bem's gang carried gold-plated weapons and subjected enemies to necklacing, which was the name of the gruesome action of jamming a tire over a man's head and then setting it aflame. The favelas were meant to be cleaned up for the 2016 Summer Olympics, but sadly, all that happened in the end was a cover-up operation, shown by a wall being built around the Mari Favela complex to shield it from the eyes of the visiting tourists. Unless a real change is introduced, the blood-soaked favelas will remain in the hands of the local gangs. And number 1, Cité Soleil, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. On the outskirts of Port-au-Prince in Haiti lies Cité Soleil, aka Sun City. Despite its name, Sun City is a foul slum which is under tyrannical gang rule. With no sewage system, the garbage and excrement of the inhabitants sit in stagnant mosquito-infested puddles. The smell and hygiene isn't the only thing you need to worry about here. With AIDS running rampant, life expectancy hanging in the low 50s, and incredibly, no police force to protect you from the drug lords and kidnappers who control the streets, this is truly a horrible place to live. The United Nations even tried to help the slums in 2004. After deploying thousands of troops in Cité Soleil, they engaged in numerous gun battles with the slums gangs. Partial peace and order were achieved, but the violence in the region only increased after the earthquake of 2010. After the earthquake shook the country of Haiti, Cité Soleil emerged for the large part unscathed. However, the nearby National Penitentiary was damaged, causing a wave of 3,000 deadly inmates to escape from their cells in the resulting chaos of the natural disaster. These convicts returned to Cité Soleil with a vengeance, riding motorcycles with assault rifles at the ready. They burned all their arrest records and took back the slum, setting back the progress made by the United Nations. To this day, you must pass through an armed UN checkpoint to enter the slum. Although, I don't know why anyone would voluntarily enter Haiti's little slice of hell on earth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button. Be sure to check out our other videos to learn more cool facts about places from across the world.